So in our last video, we talked about how abuela needed to see the whole picture. Well, in order for us to see the whole picture, we're going to need to go all the way back to the beginning along with her.
I thought we would.
Abuela's loss of her husband created a fear that she would lose more, and so this fear drives a lot of her other fears.
A second chance. And I was so afraid to lose it.
So because of abuela's fear due to the trauma that she had in her past, she had come to the conclusion that the only way to keep from losing anything in the future was to work hard, to be dedicated, to prove herself worthy of the miracle, until we came to the point where perfectionism seemed to be the only answer to the problem.
We must never take our miracle for granted. So today, we will work twice as hard.
We swear to always help those around us and earn the miracle that somehow found us. The town keeps growing, the world keeps turning, but work and dedication will keep the miracle burning, and each new generation must keep the miracle burning.
Abuela's fear of losing things, although understandable, does tend to drive her perfectionism, and also tends to create a controlling behavior towards the other people. She feels that not only does she have to be perfect, but the family needs to be perfect as well. And the only way to do that is to do some controlling behaviors. Controlling behaviors in relationships tend to follow the same kind of patterns. Typically, if you have a negative power base in your relationship where you're trying to control the other person, then fear, conditional love, and manipulation, or using guilt as part of that manipulation, typically is the most common ways to control somebody else. If you have a more positive base of power in your relationship where you have influence with one another, then you tend towards trust and unconditional love. Now, abuela, she uses quite a few of these control tactics in her way to create perfection in her family. The first one is conditional love. She offers more love and affection and attention to those who please her, and tends to ignore those who don't please her.
So the best way for some of us to help is to step aside. Let the rest. I knew you could do it. A gift just as special as you.
Mama, be nice to Mirabel, okay? You know tonight will be hard for her.
Such a perfect match.
So perfect.
So good for the Encanto.
As a part of this, the controller says, I will give you love, affection, and kindness if you do what I want. If you live up to my standards, if you do what I want, then I show you love, affection, and kindness. Now, because of this, because the other family members see what happens to those who don't live up to her standards, or they feel that they don't get the same affection, then it creates this fear. They're afraid that they won't be worth something if they don't live up to this impossible standard of perfection.
It was your vision, Mirabel, not mine.
You're afraid abuela will see you.
Yep, I mean, yes, that too.
As you can see in this scene, as abuela is walking by each of them, that you can see the fear in their eyes and their need to appear to be perfect as she's walking by. This is the perfect scene to capture that. There's also a lot of guilt that is involved in this as well, as the family members feel that they need to live up to what the family needs, to do what they can for the family, and if they don't, that they're letting down the family.
No matter how hard any of us tries, Luisa will never be strong enough. Isabela won't be perfect enough. Bruno left our family because you only saw the worst in him.
So I tell my students, if you decide to go with perfectionism as a way to solve things, then
get used to disappointment.
Not only just disappointment, but crushing disappointment, like soul-crushing disappointment. Like, things will never, ever, ever be perfect. So get ready to be disappointed all of your life, basically.
Tell me what's wrong.
Many of the other family members picked up on abuela's need for perfection and her control, and have started their own need for perfection themselves. As you can see, they are continually disappointed. For instance, Luisa, who is one of the strongest people in the world, never feels like she's strong enough, is always worried that she's not going to be strong enough, and never feels like that she's worth anything. All of her self-worth is based on what she can do and what she can accomplish, and yet she never feels like she has any self-worth.
I'm pretty sure I'm worthless if I can be of service. Who am I if I can't carry it all? If I falter.
Luisa, could you bring over the piano?
Okay. Wow, I'm a loser.
Peppa is never allowed to be sad and has to have complete control over her emotions. Anytime she's sad, everybody else tells her to stop it. It reminds me a lot of the circle of sadness from Inside Out, where sadness is not allowed to come out of the circle. It's not a good way to control yourself.
Tell you how to do your job. Just make sure that all the sadness stays in the circle.
Peppa, you have a cloud.
I know, Mama, but now I can't find Antonio. What do you want from me?
Peppa, calm down.
I'm doing my best. Yes. You're lucky it's not a hurricane.
Now with Isabella, it's no wonder that she's so miserable. She spends her whole life afraid and fearful that she's not going to be good enough, that she's not perfect enough, and she feels trapped.
Selfish! I've been stuck being perfect.
Her misery and her fear is what makes her so mean.
The only thing you have ever done for me is mess things up. Nothing is messed up.
I make perfect practiced poses. So much hides behind my smile.
Perfectionism is really just another form of control, but it's a control over yourself. You use fear to control yourself, a fear of not being good enough. It's conditional love, that you hate yourself if you think that you aren't living up to your standards, and you manipulate yourself by guilt all the time to be able to stop yourself from falling short. Now, some of you who control yourself through perfectionism or through control others have this fear that if you give up on that control, then what's to keep you from failing? That maybe you'll falter, that maybe you won't have the motivation to keep running. If you don't control your family members, then they will fail also. But you have to remember something.
Fear is the path to the dark side.
Now remember, all of this started actually from Abuela's trauma that she had in her past, that her fear started from that. Abuela's fear is understandable because of the trauma that she had in her past. This is sometimes why we talk about generational trauma and why it moves from one generation to another, because the fear that she has gets passed on to her kids, and they feel that same fear, and also they feel that same perfectionism, and they get trapped as well. So for those of you who are afraid to give up on your fear because you think it'll make you a slacker or make you fail or something like that, let's go back to Isabella as an example here. Now, if you remember, if we go back in time a little bit, she mentions this prophecy that Bruno has of her.
Told me that the life of my dreams would be promised and someday be mine. He told me that my power would grow like the grapes that thrive on the vine.
Now, the thing to remember is that this prophecy does not come true until she decides to give up on her fear and actually forget about perfectionism.
What could I do if I just knew it didn't need to be perfect? It just needed to be, and it let me be.
Louise is able to find strength through vulnerability and weakness.
So strong.
Yeah, but sometimes I cry.
So do
I may not be as strong, but I'm getting wiser.
Peppa learns she doesn't have to control herself anymore and can let it out.
You were sweating, and I wanted you to know that your bro loves you so. Let it in, let it out, let it rain, let it snow, let it go. That's what I'm always saying, bro.
And even Abuela learns to give up perfection at the very end, and they build their new house on
Isn't
that.
perfect. Neither are we. That's true. Just one more.
So what are you waiting for? Give up on your desire for control, give up on your desire of perfection. You might find yourself growing even faster if you do that.